You've been randomly selected. This happened about 3 years ago while going through an airport in the US. I walked through the metal detector, something must have beeped and they needed to pat me down. After a thorough pat down, I put my shoes on and started to walk over to grab my bag. A TSA agent stops me and says, "You've been randomly selected, please step into the body scanner." I was polite, but said that I really didn't want to get into the body scanner, and asked if there was another way. The agent said that I could get a pat down. I said, well, I just got a pat down, so they angrily told me to pick an option. So, I took 2 steps backwards, to the woman who had patted me down 30 seconds ago and spread M again. While she was patting me down, I asked her if she found anything new. She stared daggers at me but let me go. TSA pulled me aside the other day and asked me what some item in my bag was that was circled on the x-ray. I can't read those button-up things, so I answered I don't know. Maybe makeup? Which was apparently the worst answer because then it became them accusing me I didn't know what was in my bag. The item in question was a bottle of a spice blend I purchased.
Honestly, how the zucchini are you supposed to be able to look at a blurry image of an x-ray, and immediately tell them what the item in question is?
I fly for business. I've been randomly selected a few times and it's never been a big deal, except one time. I have pre-check, so I go through a metal detector. It beeps for the randomly selected, so I go through the body scanner. It's clean. I go to get my backpack, and it's been pulled for additional screening. After that, the TSA tells me I need to be patted down because some swab test on my hands failed. So, at this point I'm angry, and wait for it to be mid-pat down, right around the waist, and just let out the littlest of moans. The TSA guy looked like he'd been hit with a brick. I laughed. I don't remember where I read it, but I'll always remember the stealth button-up TSA story. Basically, the guy got it up and tucked it underneath the rubber band on the leg of his underwear. In comes the TSA guy and his pat down, finds suspicious hidden bump, asks what it is. Well, it's a banana. Sir, why do you have an erection at a security checkpoint? I just love a man in uniform and you grab me so firmly yet so gently. I don't know how many shades of red a single person can turn at the same time, but this was always my favorite retaliation for passengers always getting their balls fondled. Bank won't make change, I close my account instead. This happened a few years ago. I was working at a large national chain restaurant as a manager. I was asked to temporarily reassign to a location in a city about an hour away, and accepted. They put me up in a hotel, the whole 9 yards. The first weekend I was there, I discovered that the GM had screwed up and not ordered any change, small bills/rolls of coins, for the safe, and that the local branch of our bank would be closing in the next hour. I also happened to have a personal account at the same bank, and had, in the past, gone and gotten change from the branch back home. Since time was tight, I quickly looked up the address of the bank, grabbed $800 and jumped in my car. I get to the bank, wait in line, and then ask them to make change, $400 in $5 bills, $300 in $1 bills, and $100 in assorted rolled coins. The teller tells me that the bank doesn't make change. Me, thinking it was because they didn't know me, informed her that our restaurant had an account she could look up. Then told me, no, we don't make change at all. The thought going through my brain was, WTF? You are a bank. I tried explaining the situation, but was quickly shot down. I left, went back to my car, then had an idea. I went back inside the bank with my personal checkbook. Got to the front of the line, and, luckily, the same teller. Before she could even greet me, I held out my checkbook and told her, I would like to close this account, since this bank is no longer customer service oriented. She kind of rolled her eyes, but went about my request. Then she asked how I wanted my cash back. An automatic response, I'm sure, and one I was counting on. I said, $400 in $5s, $300 in $1s, $70 in rolled quarters, $25 in rolled dimes, $4 in rolled nickels, and $1 in rolled pennies. The rest can be on a cashier's check. No reason for her to deny it, so I got my change. And the following Monday, I returned, closed out the other 2 accounts I had there, and I opened accounts at a different bank where I have been banking ever since. Edit, so, wow, never saw this exploding this much. I have only read a few comments and won't be back online until tomorrow to read the rest. But let me clarify something from the comments I did read. I did not open or close any accounts for the business. Closed my personal account and took the payout in small change to help the restaurant, then kept the larger bills for myself. In essence, I made myself into the bank. I made change for the restaurant. On Monday, I closed all of my personal accounts with this bank, and opened new accounts at a different bank, and deposited the $800 in large bills along with the money from my accounts. Also, this was 15 years ago, so banking at the time was not all done on a smartphone, and none of my bills were autopay. I still wrote checks. Edit 2, thank you so much, kind strangers. My first gold ever. And I think it's only my second or third time getting silver, don't honestly remember. Seriously didn't expect this to take off this way. Very clever and well deserved. I switched to my current bank 14 years ago when my old one refused to make change. A friend needed change and we went to my bank. The teller refused since he didn't have an account. I told her I had an account and she said it was his money, so no. Asked him to borrow money, he handed it to me, and I said it was my money now and she said no because I was just going to give it back to him. We needed change pretty urgently and he said fine, I will open an account. And she shot him down saying he would close it immediately, and she wasn't stupid. So I closed my account and went to the bank in the next town and have been with them ever since.
What is it to her if you gave borrowed money back to him anyway? This whole thing is just the worst customer service I've ever heard of. Just because the bank may have had a policy against non-customers making change doesn't mean you have to be a butternut if there's a way to help out. Like, look for ways to help out despite rigid and non-nuanced rules passed down by faceless corporations.
I have never heard of a zucchini bank. That's where the money is, not making change. What in the coconut? I'd seriously be interested in knowing what bank, not specific location, it was. I had a bit of the opposite problem. Went to the US and had to get about used 600. Visited 3 different ATMs because of the limits but ended up with a wad of 20s. At the last bank, I asked that they give me bills of 100 in exchange and they refused. To get a manager involved and explain that I got all the money from their machine and how unsafe it was to walk around Chicago in my current state. Thankfully, he agreed. Embarrassed smiley face.
I can honestly say that this is the first time I've seen 1,000 separator at the top of the number.
Those stories about US banking here are quite entertaining. Around here, when closing a bank account, the question would be, and what's the account number where the remaining balance should be transferred to? Uber drivers can't file class action lawsuits, so 12,500 drivers filed individually for third-party arbitration. Uber, you may not sue us in a court of law, you must take all complaints to third-party arbitration. 12,500 drivers, hold my beer. Class action lawsuit would mean that Uber only needed to deal with one plaintiff. But by filing 12,500 individual requests for arbitration, Uber has to hire and pay for tens of thousands of arbitrators to deal with each complaint individually. If this is the necessary spark to dump the forced arbitration clauses, I'm all for it. I love it when the little guy is able to use the system that was designed to flatten him to instead help him.
Except that Uber isn't paying the arbitration fees, so arbitration can't happen, so now the little guys have to file a lawsuit to make Uber either honor the contract, or the court will void the contract and then the people guy has to file a lawsuit. Uber will make sure this takes years and ends up only costing the independent contractors money, not themselves.
I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way of suing based upon the fact that their arbitration agreement isn't being fulfilled in a timely manner. 12,500 drivers, hold my beer. I think I've ridden with them a few times. TL, doctor, Uber messed up, tried to screw workers by not calling them workers, now has 7 meters in legal fees to pay so that they can be taken to court, as they required each driver to file an individual complaint through an arbitrator by putting arbitration clauses in their contract that prevents class action lawsuits.
That $18.07 doesn't even take into account the actual payout per client, assuming there's payout.